Hi, welcome back. In this episode, what we will be doing is we will be using the form model that we have built uh, in the previous installment to map it to our form. So this is the form that we currently have, and just to just to show you the form, just to show you the model. So let me create a branch first. So this is going to be called part 4, and just to make sure that okay. So what we will do now is we'll go and look at the form that we have the model that we have created so far. So anyway, I'm going to go into here. Okay. So this is the model that we have. Okay. So we have built the model in the kboard component, the form model. So the form model consists of three controls and one array. So the controls are called title, created by, and comments. And then we have got an array which is called cards, the field which is called cards. And then every element in the array is a group which consists of two controls, a description and a priority. It's easy. I've created a slide so that it's easier for you to visualize. So this is our original, this is our form, the entire the entire form. So this entire form is a group. Every field in here, the three fields are called title, created by, and comments. Okay, so we have got an array. Every element in the array is a group which consists of two controls, the description and the priority. So you can see them here. So this is represents a card, one of this card, and then it's got two controls, description and priority, and the board itself consists of three controls: title, created by, and comments. Okay, title, created by, and comments, and then the cards. Okay, uh, I also have, furthermore, I also have two members, which is called a board group, which points to the form group. So the board group points to the overall form, and also just as a convenience member, I've got a card array which points to this array, which points to the array that is holding the group. So this array here. Okay. So what we are going to do in this episode is to map this model to the form. So we're going to create bindings from the model to the form so that when we change the model, the form will likewise change. Just before we begin, just before we get into it, we need to talk a little bit about how we bind attributes to elements and how do we get listen to events. We will actually be looking at some of this later on in more detail in future episodes. But for the time being, I'll just briefly explain this because we need some of these concepts for binding our models to arrays. So if you do JavaScript, you know that you've got a button. So this button is a component, and the way you configure the button, so the the button itself is opaque to us because it's a component, so it's opaque to us. We do not know what is happening inside the button. So to configure the button, that is to pass parameters into the button or to pass values into the button, you would use the attribute in the button element. For example, like if you want to disable the button, you would use the attribute called disable, and you set the values into the button, right? Then the button will be disabled. Or if you want to set a style, you would use style, or you want to set a class, you would use class, etc. If somebody clicks the button, if a user clicks the button can notify your JavaScript program by firing an event. So for example, if it's click, then it fires the on click. It fires the click event. And the way your JavaScript program captures this on click event is to assign your event handler, your JavaScript event handler, to the on-click to the on-click attribute, right? So every event fired from the button will have on something like on blur, for example, right? etc. Okay, so this is vanilla JavaScript. So in Angular, there is a similar concept as well. The concept is same as well, except that Angular allows for binding of attributes. Angular allow the association uh, to be both ways. In this case, the event, the value is only assigned to the attribute once. But however, in Angular, the any changes to the value, okay, uh, will automatically be updated by Angular. So the way Angular works is this: to bind an event, to bind an attribute, any attribute, you use the square bracket like that. Okay, so what basically we are saying is this: there is a variable called should disable in uh, in in the TypeScript class or in the component in which this button is, and when this value changes in the component, okay, update the button. So this square bracket, this is called attribute binding. To capture any event, we use the round brackets. Okay, so instead of having on click, you drop the on and just put click. So whenever this button is pressed, the click event is fired. Angular will capture it, and Angular will call the the click the click uh, event handler. Okay, so we will use these two attribute binding and event binding to bind our to bind our model to the HTML form. Okay, so let's do this. So this is our this is our form. Okay, this is our model. Okay, so what we'll do now is this: we will now get our HTML form. So this is the form. Okay, right. So if you recall from the earlier on in the previous episode, what we did was this: we imported the form and the reactive forms uh, into our module. So let's have a look at it again. Okay, so this guy here. So right. So when we import forms and reactive form into our module, Angular will add a few additional elements or attributes into our application. Okay, so basically what Angular will do is this: Angular will add additional attributes uh, into the form. Okay, so so let's come back to here. So this is the form, right? And we want to bind. Oops. So we want to bind this board group, to this entire form. Okay, so this is what we are trying to do. Okay, we are trying to bind the board group to this form. So the way to do that is like this. Okay, so Angular has got introduced a directive or an attribute called formGroup. Okay, so we use the square bracket and we assign it to board group like that. Okay. Okay, so we do that. So if you do it correctly, this value. Okay, so this object will now be, so this group will now be bound to this form. So now all we need to do is just take every control inside the group and map it to the input. So for example, this is the title. Okay, so we will use the form control form control name. Okay, and then we will say this is title. Okay, so the title actually comes from here. Okay, so if you misspell this guy, you will get an error. You say that I cannot find title in the group, right? So you find. So similarly, for this is the created by. So you say form control name. equals to created by, okay, and we'll do the same thing for the for the text area, form control name. This is comments. Okay. So just make sure that there's no error. So we have bound these three fields, these three control to our three input. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is that we're going to bind the cards array to the table. Okay. So we'll go down to here. Okay. So this table. So this part. So the body of the table represents the control. So we're going to say form array name is equals to cards. So like that. Okay. So we are doing this part here, right? So now what we need to do is this. Since the form array is an array, what we'll do is this. We will look through every element in the array, okay, to get the group, and then we will do the same thing. We'll take the group and then we'll map it to the elements. So this is what we do. Okay, so this whole thing here is one element. So we're going to create a loop. So we're going to create a loop here. So Angular has got a loop called ng-for. Okay, so this is like a basic loop. So notice for this attribute, there is a star in front of it. So it's called a structural directive. Basically, what this means is that this directive creates new elements. Okay, so it's called structural directive. So we're going to say, let C of cards array, right? So cards. So we call cards array is this thing, okay? So this thing. So we will get from the cards array, we will get a controls. We get controls, okay? So we try looping through. So if you now notice, right, that we no longer have that. So previously, if we remove this, okay, you'll notice that we have this, right? But the moment we add this in, right, because currently there's nothing inside the array, so nothing is displayed. Okay, so now C is actually a group, right? So for us, every element in the array is a group. Is this group? So now we do the same thing. So we take the C, we will say form group, assign it to C. So just like our form above here, the form group over here, okay? So we assign it to there. So now everything underneath here, right? So the two controls underneath here will be bound to the controls defined in the form group. So like this. So if you recall, this thing here, form control name, this control name is description. Okay, and then this select here, this is priority. Okay, so currently we still don't see anything yet. Okay, so let's see what happens now. So what we're going to do now is this. When we click on the add card, what we're going to do is this. We're going to add a new line to here. So what essentially this amounts to is that when we click a button, right, we will add a new card into this array. And this is how we go about doing it. So we can, first of all, define a function called add card, an event handler called add card, and then this will just say this cards array, right? We'll push, and then we'll call our this create card method. So remember, this create card creates creates a group with two elements. So this is our array element, and then we just push it into the cards array. So we are changing the form model. Okay. So we now all we need to do now is just bind the add card function to the to this to this button. Okay. So by doing a click, add card. Like, okay. So now we can see that the form is responding now. The form is responding now. So what happened is this: when we click on add card, this function is called, this method is called. Inside the method, we will just create additional card and push them into the card array. So once the underlying model changes, right, Angular will detect that the reactive form will detect that the form array has changed, and then what it will do is that it will execute this part, okay, to uh, to reflect the new model on the form. Okay, so now what we would like to do is that we would like to press this to delete this. So again, this is very simple. Since you are inside a loop, the ng-for exports a variable called index. Okay, so all we need to do is this: we need to assign the index. Okay, so this is the index that uh, the ng-for exports. Okay, so we assign it to its index, and then what we do is this: we do the same thing to this button, right? We will say click. Okay, we'll call this remove card, and we just pass in the index like that. Okay, so now all we need to do is just go back here and just say write a event handler, remove card, and we'll pass it. So this is just a just normal function. We'll pass in the index, and then we just say this card array, right? Remove and we pass in the index. Okay, so let's try this again. Okay, so now we can add this, then we can remove the the, the card. Okay, so now we can start filling in our card. Okay, like that. Oops. Medium. Okay, so we add. So we can add this like this. Okay, so all we are left now is to capture the event. So once you're finished filling in the card, the board, we can click on create to capture the entire form, right, for processing by our component. So what we can do now is this: we can repeat a similar thing with the submit card. Okay, with this other button, with this button. However, okay, so but since this is the submit button, so we can actually, if this button, then we can just do a click and we can do, and then we can capture the form information, right? But since it's a submit, okay, what we can do is this: Angular attach an event called ng-submit to the form. Okay, so this thing. Okay, this event will be fired for this form when a submit button is created, when a submit button is pressed, in this case, right? So when we click this submit button, Angular will fire this event called ng-submit for the form. Okay, so this thing here, ng-submit again, is added by the forms module. Okay, so all we need to do is again define a function. Let's call this process form. Okay, to handle this. So all we need to do is just do this, called process form. Okay, and just to capture the form information, you can just go what equals to, we get the form model, board group. Okay, and then we just say value. Okay, so we will just console out the values. Let's say board. Okay, and then if you like to, we can clear the form by just calling initialize again. So once you've done that, okay. So let's try this guy. So we can say my to-do form, okay. So we'll put in the thread, and then so this is my first bot. Then we can add some. Then we can add some card. We can say to-do 1. So let's just low priority. So to-do 2, okay. And let's say to-do 3. Okay, and just to show that the delete works, we'll delete this guy. So when I click on create, we should see the information displaying out on the console. So if you click on here, we will see the information displayed out. So the comments, the title, okay, and since we will see the to do 1 and to do 3 because we have deleted to do 2. So we have essentially captured the information on the form from the form to into our into an object. Okay, so just before we end this episode, so there are some really ugly things here, like this table header here. So what we really nice is that if there are no bot, we shouldn't be seeing this. So we should probably have a message that says, please add, you can add some card to the bot. Okay, so the way we do that is to use an if statement. So it's quite simple. So again, this is a structural directive. So on a table element, you just go ng if, okay, and then we can say cards array, right? Controls, which returns an array of controls, and then we can just say length. So this is an array. Okay, we can say only displayed if it's greater than 0. So we don't see this. So now we see this. And then if we remove all this, the thing goes away, right? So what we're going to do next is this. We're just going to add a little message here. So like this. Okay, we'll say, let's say, okay, add some cards to your bot. Like that. Okay, right? So we can, same thing, we can just reverse this logic here. Say ng if, okay, cards array controls length, okay, and then we can say less than or equals to 0. Okay, I mean it will never be less than 0. Okay, so let's leave some space between these two. So we'll just use the same size here. We'll use the empty form. There's margin top 4 places. This is a CSS utility from Bootstrap. So we got some space here. So if we add a cut, so that goes away, and if we remove that, that comes back. So maybe we should do a little bit more. Let's put a little hand here just to point to this cut, right? So let's go to Font Awesome. 5 icons. And we look for the gallery. Okay, so let's look at hand. Okay, so we want this pointer. So we want something to point up. So it's hand point up. Okay, so let's put this here. So IFAR FA hand point up. Oops. Okay. So okay, so let's move that here. So we will add some. Move this guy down. So we use the flex box. So again, we will use the bootstraps utility. So it's bflex. We want it to be justify content between. Okay. So that will move it up here. So we want to center this. We will say align items center. Okay, like that. So let's make it bigger by just saying FA2X. Okay, so we've got that. So now we can go add card. Then we can remove that. Okay, so you see that ABC right Gmail. Okay, so we can add some card. Okay, and then we can capture the information and see this is our card. Okay, so we have now bound our form model. We've now bound our form model to the form. Okay, so in the next installment, in the next episode, we'll be adding form validation. So for example, currently, if you just click on this guy, okay, the form will get submitted, even though everything is empty. So in the next episode, what we'll do is that we will add some validation to this. We will say, some of the fields are mandatory. For example, like the title and created by are mandatory. The comments, the comments can be optional. You can choose not to fill in the comment, but these two you must fill in. So we'll have some rule. We put in some validation so that this button will only be enabled when the form has been properly filled in. Okay, so what I will do now is this. We will end here. I will push this branch of the code into the part 4 branch. Okay, so the repository for the code, you can get it here. Okay, so till next time, stay safe.